Hey everybody, Grant Sims here with Chief River Security. Today I'm going to take some time to extend upon the OAuth series that I've been contributing to, where we're just kind of diving into some OAuth concepts for the enterprise, as well as some POCs and demos, where you can kind of get familiar with the components of OAuth and some platforms that provide services for it. So today, really deep diving into the Auth0 Okta offering of OAuth. And I wanted to spin up just a self-contained demo environment where we have all the components, everything can be deployed via code, and it'll give you an environment where you can play around with the concepts and tweak and change things just to get familiar with the offering as well as the concepts of OAuth and what Auth0 has to offer. So come check out this repo. You can pull this down. It's a public repo here on my Chief River account. And let's dive a little bit into the concepts of this POC. We'll talk it through and then we'll actually go into the demo and check it out. So like I said, this is a fully contained demo environment utilizing Okta's Auth0 platform, utilizing a simple React single page application, as well as some AWS bits as the resource server. So what we're going to be doing here today is standing up local, running on your local host, a simple React application. That React application is then going to interact with Auth0. As you can see here, we're going to be configured as a client in Auth0. We're going to pull down some ID and access tokens into our React app. We'll be able to see what those are and kind of interrogate them. Then we'll be sending those tokens over to our resource server, which we've stood up a simple REST-based API gateway in AWS that's backed by a Lambda function running some basic Node.js code, which will then return just a JSON object to show that the authorization worked correctly, that it passed it back to our Lambda function, and returned the information back to our single page application. Once again, the Auth0 configuration is all Terraformed out for you, so this will set up the client app for you, set up the authorization server, any custom scopes, as well as the AWS side. This is going to stand up your API gateway, the REST-based, which has built-in JWT authorization, and as well as the Lambda function and the simple Node.js code behind it. So to get going, you want to get Terraform, you want to get Node, you need an AWS account, and you need an Auth0 developer account. So you can head over to, I'm not going to go into the AWS and Node and Terraform. Those should be pretty simple, to tons of information to figure out how to get those going. As far as going over to Okta and getting your Auth0 account, I've done some other demos on the Workforce Identity Cloud, which is more of your B2B or your internal SSO platform. This is a newer offering by Okta, I should say newer partnership with Auth0, more tied to your B2C type of applications. So this is what you're going to want to get set up on, is the Customer Identity Cloud here, and start getting that set up, and then we'll just have a simple setup to get some access into your development account, and then we'll get Terraform to do the rest of the heavy lifting for us. So let's start going here. What you want to do first, I've already done some of this in the background. You want to set up your AWS credentials, so make sure you set those as environment variables, or there's other forms as doing that as well, but that's probably the simplest. And then for your OAuth account, once you get in there, we have to do some basic setup just to give it, Terraform some API access in order to start deploying the infrastructure. So what you want to do, you can come over here. This is my deployment environment. You can see that there's really nothing in here but the defaults. So what I'm going to do, let me give this a refresh here. So what we want to do is just, like I said, set up an application that allows us access into the environment for our Terraform. So we're going to set up a machine-to-machine app. We can just call this demo. select an API. We just want to give it access to the Auth0 management API. We're going to give it all permissions. Obviously, you could scope these accordingly, just for simplicity here. Once you got the machine-to-machine application set up, you can see it here. We have our client ID. We're going to want to copy that over and start to set our environment variables. So let's get our OAuth client ID. Let's set that. So we have that set. Now we need to get the secret for it. Now we have our secret set. And last but not least, we need to set the domain so that Terraform knows which Auth0 to manage. You can get that information from up here. Make sure you have export. We also need to ensure that we set our TF-vars for our Terraform deploy. Most of these can stay consistent. You just need to update your auth domain as well as your Auth0 full domain, and the rest can stay static there. So I've already updated these with my Auth0 domain. Do so before doing your Terraform apply. All right, now we have it all set. So now we want to go in and deploy the AWS and Auth0 infrastructure. So once again, going back to our diagram here, we're going to deploy the client app, we're going to deploy the auth server, we're going to deploy the AWS API gateway, Lambda function, etc. So we are already in the infrastructure main folder where our main TF files sit. So let's Terraform apply. All right, you can see we're going to add 14 objects here. We're going to say yes. So right now Terraform's going out, it's deploying our Auth0 resources, it's deploying our AWS resources. So now it's going out, it's creating those resources. You can check out the Terraform code in here under the solution, under Auth0. These will be all the resources that we're deploying. So now we come back to our environment in the UI just to check it out. And we should be able to see some new applications. So now we have a test app here. We also have an API that was created called Test Resource with an audience over here of testresource.com. So looking at the AWS resource side, we can go to API Gateway. We can see that we have this resource Auth0 PoC dev created. There's one simple /static request here. It's a GET request. We can see that there's an authorization configured. This points to our issuer as well as our audience, and it's doing some JWT validation here. We can also see the integrations behind it. We've created a AWS Lambda function with a GET request. We can go check out that Lambda function. And that Lambda function, like I said, is a very basic Node.js code that is simply just returning some returning a JSON object. So looking here, you know, this is just return this message. So we have the infrastructure deployed. Now we need to set up our single page application. We need to set up our client over here. This single page application, once again, like I said, needs to be, you know, pre-configured for this Auth0 client application in order to be able to, you know, authorize a user, get those tokens over to the single page application, and then send them over to AWS. So in order to do that, now we have to deploy our front end. So the first thing we need to do is update all of our global environment variables there for our front end client so that they fit your environment. So let's go over here. We can go into the front end, we want to go to source, and we want to go to config, global config. So now we need to update these components with what was deployed in your environment. So first we'll start off with the API base URL, and I've provided that via Terraform outputs down below. So update that. We need to update our domain. So once again, our Auth0 domain is right here. We need to update our client ID. For some of the outputs, they're deemed sensitive, so we have to run an additional command just to pull those out of Terraform for ease. So you can see the command right here. You can copy that and paste that, and we'll get the rest of our environments. So now for our client ID, Auth0 client ID. We need to, our audience is already set via the Terraform code we deployed, but just know that you can change the Terraform code as well as, update that information to play around with, as well as the OpenID scopes, OpenIDC scopes. These are just standard OpenIDC scopes that are set. You can change and play around with those. This was a custom scope we set in our Terraform code just to show you how that works. Once again, I did display it down here, but you can update that as you see fit. So now we have all of our environment variables set. We should be ready to go. Let's now go run our Node.js SPA and see how it works. So let's back out of here. Let's go into our front end. And let's run this. We're going to go to localhost 3000. We're going to now log into the single page application. The single page application is set up to both have local users as well as continue with federated access via Google. I haven't set up any users in the Terraform code, so the expectation here is to log into with your Google identity. However, you could go set up a local account in Auth0, but like I said, I'm going to continue with the Google authentication. Now, it's asking my consent to allow this single page application that we've created to have access to our profile via the profile OpenIDC scope that we provided. So this is me saying, okay, hey, my local application, test application here is asking for access to my profile information. So I'm going to accept this. And now we're in. So you can see that we have actually authenticated our single page application, and I'm just displaying some information from the ID token. So if you look here, you can see we pulled the image. This is the rendered image right here. This is what's provided in the ID token is a URL with your image for your Gmail, or I should say your Google profile. It also has the given name, your family name, nickname, etc. All this information is pulled from the ID token that was provided. Now, we also grabbed an access token. And as I said before, we're going to take that access token that we've gotten from our Auth0 authorization server, and now we're going to send it over to our AWS resource, which is the API gateway. It's going to take that token. It's going to do all the validation steps that a JWT requires, like checking expiration, checking the audience, checking who the issuer was, checking the signature, etc. And then if it passes all those checks, it's going to send it back to the Node.js simple Lambda function that's going to return some data. So let's press fetch data. We can actually pull up. Let's pull up some web developer tools here. So we can, let's go to the network and let's press fetch data. So we can see that we made a GET request out to our API gateway here. If we expand upon this, we can look at the headers here. If we scroll down the headers, we can see the authorization token was provided here, and we got a response of our data. So also looking just at the UI, you can see this is the data returned from your API, and that is the JSON object that was returned from our Lambda function. So going back to the header and the request we made here, let's just grab this access token and take a look at it. If we pull this up in jwt.io, this is a standard JWT or JOT, so we can paste that information in and we can actually see the contents of it. We can see, you know, the issuer was our Auth0 domain. We can see the audience that was set here. We can see, you know, when the token was created in epoch time, when it was expired, and the scopes that were requested as part of that access token. So with that, going back to our diagram, let's recap what we achieved. So we deployed some Auth0 configuration via Terraform. We deployed some AWS configuration via Terraform, which was our resource, which consisted of an API gateway that was doing authorization of JWTs. We set up a single page application, configured it to be a client of that Auth0 authorization server to be able to get tokens, send those tokens over to our API gateway to get authorized, and then return that information. So once again, you know, you can take this PoC, get familiar with it, get it running, change some things around. I hope you you know, picked up some information here today that can help you on your journey as you understand Auth0 as well as OAuth in general. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Any areas you'd like me to deep dive, more than happy to. And have a great day. Appreciate your time, everybody.